Going to call the May 13, 2021 Dorchester Planning Commission meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is determine a quorum, and we have all 7 commissioners present. Next item is a review of minutes from April 8, 2021 meeting. Mr. Simileski,
I move that we approve as submitted.
do I have a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, and the ayes have it. We have our Dorchester County Water and Sewer Director, Mr. Larry Harper, with us today, who's going to give us an update on Dorchester County infrastructure, and we certainly appreciate his time because you know how busy those folks are these days. Right on time. As planned. Mr. Harper,
You're up.
the chair recognizes you and the floor is yours. And thank you so much for your time today. We know that you guys are probably dealing with a few issues right now.
We are probably trying to put 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag every day. So, sorry that I'm running just a little late. I got caught up with the administrator, and he says, I think I got a thumb drive. I got a small presentation, if you will allow me.
Can you push on that one?
Okay. Where did I plug this thing in? Okay.
While they're getting set up, I'd just like to say that there's a lot of pressure on Dorchester County, especially Upper Dorchester County now, of large tracts of land that are ripe for development. Water and sewer is always an issue when we start looking at that, and that's why we've asked Mr. Harper today to kind of bring us up to date on where we stand with water and sewer capacity in relation to these potential developments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I love when technology works like this. One of the main challenges that we have in water and sewer is doing what's called a future look. We are always looking at time horizons. The time horizon for water and sewer is usually 30 years. That requires a pretty strange crystal ball that we look at. I'm going to walk you through just a few slides, answer any comments and questions, just stop me. But first, I thought I'd give you what life is like in water and sewer. For Tura Nostris est, water is our future. Recognizing that we focus on making sure we can address the present needs and also the future needs. Economic prosperity of Dorchester County relies on water and wastewater infrastructure's ability to accommodate both industrial growth and residential growth. We handle both industrial charges in our wastewater system, promoting industrial development to provide jobs for our citizens. Planning for these address both the potential major industry locations as well as promoting a high quality of life for our residents. We're one of the largest businesses in Dorchester County. If you look at us, about $32 million. Unlike other departments, water and sewer receives no tax funds from anyone. We are essentially an enterprise fund. And last year, instead of receiving money from the general fund, we wrote a check about $1.6 million for our overhead allocation. So we pay for ourselves and then help others. We operate 139 pump stations, 2 wastewater treatment plants. Water distribution is over 175 miles, ranging from 2-inch to 24 inches. Wastewater system is over 360 miles, with pipes running from about 2 to 36 inches. We have about 14,900 water customers, serve over 27,000 sewer customers, and our staffing levels are about 40% of what our surrounding utilities are. We run a real lean operation, just because we're trying to be very cost efficient. This is our basic county service area. We go all the way down from Poplar Grove, which I call the eastern edge of the world, all the way to the edge of where we connect to Carleton County. So it's a very large, long territory. If you want to kind of figure out how all this flow works, this is just a basic schematic of how the 139 pump stations are interconnected. The big picture to your right is all the pump stations that come down to the lower plant. Then the one in the corner, in the upper left-hand corner, you'll find those are the pump stations that pump the sewage to St. George. So, and what I'll do is I'll make sure I get a copy of this presentation for your reference. County water service area is kind of interesting. Dorchester County is broken up to about 3 different water suppliers. You have something called CPW, the Water Authority. Then you have smaller ones such as St. George and Bridgeville and also Harleyville. But everything else, Dorchester County actually provides. So, one of the interesting things that has happened recently is our acquisition of new water service territory that was previously owned by the Water Authority. We traded what called the western portion for Watson Hill. So it was a real big deal in terms of they've got the rooftops, we get the area, so we can actually control what happens in the western part of that. One thing that allows us to do is that we'll talk about that, is the Lake Marion water system. The Water Authority did not actually have access to this water system. We have run about 23 miles of pipeline running from Lake Marion down to Ridgeville at the moment. High quality water. You'll probably notice as you're going up Highway 78, the large 750,000 gallon tank that were hung in the air. We're also presently at Winding Woods. It's going out to bid, I think, this week. Another 500,000 gallons at the Winding Woods Industrial Park. I have another tank that we're working on to try to get that out to bid shortly. This water system is a game changer. And why we say that is because very few people realize that Dorchester County is actually a desert in terms of available potable water. This brings in from the lake. Let me just kind of give you some statistics. We're part of what's called the Lake Marion Regional Water Authority. It's composed of Dorchester County, Calhoun County, Berkeley, Orangeburg counties, and the town of St. T. The interesting thing about this, the funding of the authority, is 75% of our money for construction comes from the federal government. It's considered a core project. So 75%, 25% local match. Part of the local match can actually be made up of grants from the state. So the out-of-pocket costs for local governments such as Dorchester County could be as less as 12 to 15%, as closer to 25%. At the completion, it'll be over $100 million will have been expended to bring this fresh water to these counties and to these towns. This is some of the investments that has happened in the Lake Marion Water Authority. We talked about 500,000 gallon tank. That's what actually out to bid now. There's a 12-inch line coming from Harleyville to connect that tank. We actually recently increased that line from Harleyville down to Wyoming Woods from a 12 to a 16, anticipating the growth that may be occurring into the western area due to the fact that we now have to control that western part of the county. The interesting feature of these lines is that as we are locating fire hydrants along those lines so that our fire departments will have access to it, it actually lowers the ISO rating and provides another means of providing enhancing the quality of life. People also lowering their insurance rates. This extension that we're talking about providing also provides water to where there's been considerable interest into the access to both interstates and a major highway. With that, we also have an interconnection going into St. George that provide them as a backup source. As you may realize that St. George is operating on 2 wells. Wells are great things. I've got a few of them myself. However, with things happening, you need a backup source. And that's what we hope to be able to provide those guys with that. We talked about the key to economic growth lies with the availability of the water. One feature of our county is that we have the most undeveloped highway interchanges along I-95 and also I-26. Having this water allows us to be able to address those needs. You probably know, you've seen our tank that's at the interchange of I-95 and 178. There's our tank and the well structure there. Very deep well, 1,650 feet, one of the deepest wells in the county. That well will probably be abandoned when we put in our Shady Grove portion of the Lake Marion water. That branch will also serve a lot of the other interchanges where we're being able to branch off. So we have been looking at it strategically, trying to address those needs into development. The one interesting feature about this water system getting from Lake Marion is that we, at the maximum capacity of that plant, we will actually draw off less water than what's lost in evaporation. So it's a very sustainable source of water. Now, one of the things that we're talking about the future forecasting, our crystal ball was our wastewater master plan that was actually done by Easy. It examined a lot of interesting things. We actually went back to the comprehensive plan, since Terry developed an excellent document. Take a look at where the development can occur, what type of development would be scattered throughout the country, out the county, and we're probably well versed in the famous 13 divisions that they have in terms of what types of infrastructure, what types of housing can go in those areas. So we use that, then look to see what the land uses are actually also occurring. Took that information, then we combined it with what I call the future development. You might hear, if you come to council meetings, they will ask me a question. The question is that in the count or not? This is the famous count. This is this snapshot was taken in 2019 when we actually began the study. This was everything that we could anticipate that was out there at 2019. Lots of developments that have not really happened. Some of them are just beginning to appear. But we looked at using the data from planning, how these particular tracks could be developed. You see the Pegasus track, even the Barn track, things like that, to to see what the wastewater generation would look like. So, if you want to see where all the stuff is scattered, this is what I call the future development count. It's scattered all over the county, but it also reflects the usages based on the comprehensive plan. So, it's a good snapshot. It kind of gives you that visual. You see that this is the light blue. Is that the stuff that's out 20, 30 years in terms of anticipation? Very low density possibly, but it gives you a pretty good snapshot of what we're up against. Now, one of the things that, as we try to develop this, we have to kind of hone in to see what will happen to the various pieces of infrastructure that we have over the time period, the time, it's 30-year planning period that we're looking at. Knowing where the growth is happening in, knowing what infrastructure we have present, take that, mash it together, run a model to see what pieces of infrastructure has to be created, whether it's parallel pipelines, increasing the size of pump stations, and also the effect on the wastewater treatment plant. This particular snapshot that we're looking at anticipates taking 16 MGD down to our lower wastewater treatment plant. Now, it gets to be interesting, and let me tell you why that's a magical number. The original concept that we started looking at increasing, expanding the lower plant, we had really only intended to expand it to 12 MGD. As the guys, supposed to be 12 MGD at lower, 4 MGD at my famous central plant. As the engineers were doing the presentation, they came in, talked, they did their 30% design. I'm sitting in watching these guys, they're telling me what they're building, and I noticed that we were building almost 16 MGD capacity. Then they hadn't fixed it on the front end, they hadn't worked size and that. But where the bugs live, where the treatment pieces, I had about 16 MGD. So I asked the question, what would it take to go to 16 instead of 12? They were kind of shocked that I asked the question because they were working for 12 for about 6 months. And so we'll get back to it. When they came back, it's kind of interesting. We found that we could actually take that plant to 16 MGD for about $4 million more. Keep in mind that the central plant would have cost me $51 million to build at that particular time. So I look like a rocket scientist. I saved the county $46 million by just asking that one question. Now, let's take a closer look. This is where we model the scenarios about how all the growth is occurring in a particular period of time. It's the famous 0 to 5, 5 to 20, and 20 to 30, and see what happens to the system. Now, what the model told me is this. It shows me how much flow is being generated, and you notice that supposedly at 2050, I may hit 16 MGD. That timeline is probably inaccurate. The reason why is that we're seeing more flow. The developers seem to be slightly more aggressive in trying to deliver the product to market. So we are actually seeing an increase in flow. This was done 3 years ago, and things have changed since 3 years ago. Now, the trigger, and I'll talk about that later, but the trigger for me to build the central plant is when lower plant reaches 85% of its capacity, design capacity at 16, which is about 13.6 million gallons. So at that point, literally, I will have to go ahead and start construction of the plant. Now, when is that trigger point? We don't know. Very soon, as the stuff comes online. It may be, I had a time horizon of 15 years in the back of my mind where I was going to build this plant. It may be shortened down to 10 or even 7.5. But the trigger point is 85% of capacity at the lower plant causes me to go central. Now, how much does all this stuff cost? And this is just looking at the pipelines. Not even talking about the plant. So in this 3-year period, I got to complete a parallel force main. I've got to start a new pump station, expand pump station 72, which is located at Ashland Ridge High School. That design is going on as we speak. I've got to upgrade another plant, and another big pump station in 10 years. And by 30 years, I'll probably need a storage tank out. Catch about 10 MTD. It's looking at maybe at the super location as well as a plant. We're still evaluating that. That's a future snapshot for 30 years, and I think my successor will be addressing y'all in terms of that. So in 0 to 5, I'm going to have to spend about $31 million, 31.5. Let's just round that up, just to address the impacts of building that new expanded pump station 72 and running that 12-hour line. Then we move from 5 to 10 years. That's a slow year. There's a good chance of or 7 to. That's only $6 million. And then the big one comes up at that time horizon to 30, where we'll be spending about 20.5 million dollars just on pipelines alone. Pipelines, pump stations, not even talking about the plant. One thing that when you talk about water and sewer, I always talk in millions. They look at me like, how many millions will it cost me, Larry? And so I get to give you a quick snapshot of what we're talking about expending in the next 30 years. $57 million, $58 million, pipelines and pump station improvements. Lower is going to cost me about $95 million. Central, we still calling that about $51 million. The one thing about these numbers, this is a snapshot that was taken a few years ago. We are seeing acceleration of material costs. We bought some 2x4s recently. You probably noticed they're made of gold. Even still, has hit a 200% increase in cost. So these numbers give me the willies now, as opposed to being hard numbers that we're being I try to rely on. So stay tuned for further developments. Infrastructure decisions are always interesting. Some people think we go in the back room, look at the entrails, and come back and say, you can put it there. It's a little bit more rigorous decision making than that. One thing that as a director sitting in the big chair, I'm always looking at these opportunities to partner with developers so that they might be putting out development here. I've got some needs just a little bit south of it. We try to partner with those guys, put on slightly bigger pipe, we pay the cost differential so that the infrastructure that's necessary, the future, is being built now. It's a wild thought, but it's like, it's good money being invested. And the other thing that we were always thinking about, since I don't get any outside funds, my rate payers pay the cost, we're always making sure that what we're paying for is what we actually need for the future, as well as the present. So that's the reason our careful planning is required. Now, current focus of water and sewer is number one. We've got development agreements with various developers that require us to deliver services. Those are legally obligated to provide those services, and therefore we do provide those. I've got several areas in the county where we've actually had development occurring, but for some reason there are these pockets out there of unserved areas where citizens have been living for years and years. They haven't received the water and sewer. That's another one of those major focuses. That's one of my pet projects, I call it, to try to resolve that discrepancy. strengthening our water system, making sure that we're connecting the recreational water into our existing system to provide sustainable water. And as I also indicated, central plant, when we hit 85% or lower, we'll put trees on that. With that, I guess, I'm ready for questions.
Questions? Comments?
When you do pull the trigger for the central plant, what are you talking, 5 to 7 years?
It could be 7 years. Well, here's the interesting thing. If I needed to develop a plant in 7 years, that's 7 years from today, I have to start designing that plant 3 years before I can deliver it. It's usually a 5-year period. It's about 18 months to 2 years to design it, 3 years to deliver.
Okay.
So I'm always watching that clock just to see. So looking for the trigger point, might go early because you have to start early enough to be able to deliver it when you need it. The lower treatment plant that we're working on now, trigger should have been pulled even before I got here in terms of expansion.
You're running out of real estate at Appian Way?
Well, here's interesting. Well, a lot of it's more so of utilizing real estate that I have available,
Okay.
more efficient.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Harper, thank you so very, very much for
Thank you for
giving us time today, and we know you're very, very busy, and
Just call me when you need me. I'm always available.
thank you.
I recognize that I am a public servant, and make sure that I deliver this. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we have a very aggressive agenda today, so I'd ask that everybody stay on point, and we'll move through it in good order. Rezoning request, we have rezoning request number 825, property owner Rodney Patrick, and that's Central Avenue, request zoning change from R2 to CN Neighborhood Commercial. Mr. Davis.
Yes, if you look on your map, you'll see the area in red. So for the purposes of time, while they're both being, we need to vote on them separately, I think they should be kind of considered as a collective. But you have this parcel here, and then we'll have this parcel here, which is highlighted in red there. And these are the two parcels that are the next two rezoning requests. So these are the parcels on your map. I'll zoom out on GIS. You can see the context of where it's related along Central and along Orangeburg. These are here. There's neighborhood commercial across the street. We've experienced some rezoning requests in this area over the last few years. These originally started out as general commercial, but even with our recent text amendments, general commercial still would not work along this particular road corridor. So they amended their application to neighborhood commercial, and staff supports that, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Is there anybody here representing these properties? Anybody here would like to speak for or against the rezoning? Okay, commissioners, I would entertain a motion,
Move to approve?
and we're going to approve both of them in one motion, or you want them separate?
I think you should do them separately.
Okay, then we'll do rezoning request number 825 first. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Yes, sir.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Now, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. Rezoning request number 826, which is 1736 Central Avenue. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. It is approved. Rezoning request number 827. Librand, zoning change from AC, absence of control, to CG, general commercial, Duncan Chapel Road. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, so kind of coming off of Larry's conversation there about future economic development opportunities and interchanges and the importance that they will play for economic development and future value creation. This piece here, if you look, is this piece that kind of fronts a little bit on 26 and then kind of wraps down. You can see there's some wetlands through here that the GIS is showing, and then some high ground right in here. The applicant currently owns this parcel, and they are looking to purchase this parcel, get the same general commercial zoning, and ultimately, what we've been told, combine the parcels for future development at this interchange. As of right now, there is no water and sewer to serve it. They are very well aware of that. This is more kind of securing the land for future economic development, so that land is kind of set aside and reserved for the purposes of being able to develop these, as Mr. Harper said, underserved interchanges in Dorchester County.
Well, this fits into our plan, comprehensive plan of
Oh,
these
for sure.
interchanges.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, staff recommends approval. You know, we do want to note that we do understand some concerns about its access along Dunklin Chapel here, and that, you know, if this is combined in here, which staff strongly recommends, there is direct access here to 15. And we do have some things in our code that do kind of have hierarchy of access for roads when development occurs.
Anybody here representing this rezoning? Yes, sir, please come forward and give us your name and address.
My name is Adrian Williams, and my address is 8617. I'm representing the body on this issue. So Mr. Davis said we're looking at purchasing adjacent property in order to develop a full commercial, retail, industrial site that falls in line with the economic development plan. So at this point, any other questions?
Okay, commissioners, any questions?
No.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against this? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
I'm Danny Bird. I live at, it's 149 Long Plantation Road. It's the right across the road from where this comes into Duncan Chapel. And I got 20-some acres. Where the house is, the white top right there, that's mine. And years ago, I don't know how many years, it was probably 10 or 12 years ago, the property that's already zoned commercial came up before y'all, and we filled this place, and my recollection was the planning commission voted not to recommend it go commercial. Then we went to the county council meeting, and the same thing came up with county council, they voted not to make it commercial. Then when this came up to rezoning, we looked at the GIS map, and lo and behold, it's already commercial. When that happened, but I guess that's water under the bridge, ain't nothing we can do about it now. Good old boy politics, I guess, but anyway. Duncan Chapel Road, y'all are probably familiar with it, but there's pretty nice houses along Duncan Chapel Road. And it's out in the boonies. Nobody, I don't know. There's already a truck stop across the road on Highway 15. There's the two red parcels on this side of Highway 15 has 74 acres. The land in purple is zoned industrial. There's plenty of commercial land up there that they can do whatever they want with. And those of us that live up there, we like it country, and we understand there's got to be development sooner or later, but you can see all the land on the other side of the interstate is zoned commercial, and there's nobody lives over there. The two parcels adjacent to this one and the little one there, total, that's about 74 acres. You can do a lot with 74 acres. And the rumors we've been hearing are a hotel, a truck stop, and a restaurant. There's another truck stop to the west on I-26 at Homestead Road, which is 3 acres up. There's a truck stop to the east on 26 at Jedburgh. There's truck stops on I-95 at 178 and it's in St. George. There's truck stops north on 95 in Manning. And this is, you know, this interchange is in the middle of nowhere. why would anybody stay in a hotel there? And, you know, we would just, the folks up there would just recommend it. You know, I'd live with two that already got no commercial, but that one doesn't need to be zoned commercial to give us some kind of buffer from what's, you know, the big stuff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions from the commissioners? Was there anybody else who wanted to? Yes, sir, please come forward. Again, please give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Barry Lloyd, 170 Duncan Chapter Road. First off, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Barry Lloyd, I'm sorry, what was your last name?
Lloyd, L-L-O-Y-D.
Thank you.
And I apologize for not being better prepared. Unfortunately, my wife's been in the hospital for almost since the sign went up. But the property right beside the red shaded area from my perspective, if you drop that arrow down just a bit, the little rectangle, that's our property, okay? We bought that property about 15 years ago, and as soon as we bought it, they tried to get out of this zone, heavy industrial, to put a trucking laydown yard in there. Some of y'all probably remember that. And we begged and pleaded not to have it done, and, you know, the commission and the council seemed fit not to do so. We appreciate it greatly. And, you know, here we come again, and I understand these folks, you know, they inherited this land, they want to get top dollar for it, and I fully understand that. The problem is Duncan Chapel Road is a residential community. It's residential and farming community, as you guys all know. A lot of folks, it's family land, it's been in the family forever. And this part that we're talking about is Miss Verona, you know, inherited from her ancestors. The parcel that I own, which is like 2.1 acres, was one of her relatives that had passed away, and the property ended up being sold off. The thing that I'm bringing to you guys is, I'm not against development. I know we need development, you know, upper Dorchester County, I understand that totally. Right now, there's no infrastructure up there, and I appreciate the gentleman and all of his information, but still yet, we're looking at ways in the future to have that infrastructure up there. If we allow them to go commercial and put truck stops and motels and restaurants in there, there's no ditches, there's no runoff, you know, there's no allowance for natural runoff or anything other than just the lay of the land. And what it's gonna do to us that are living right there could be catastrophic for us, you know what I'm saying? There's another parcel that the gentleman wasn't able to be here that is in the shaded red area. This land surrounds his house and my house. And unfortunately for me, when I purchased this property, I was told by my agent that they would be more than willing to sell me land. And that's what my plan was to get me a little more land, have me a nice buffer for future development. My property line is 50 foot off the back door of my house. And that's what you are talking about turning into commercial. And it will ruin my wife and I's, our forever home that we bought, you know? I mean, it just ruined our quality of life. And it's probably not really pertinent to the commission, but when these people inherited this land, I knew we'd already went through this rezoning at one time. So I reached out to them and I asked them, I said, would you please consider selling me, you know, a few acres of land where I can have a natural buffer for future development? They come to my house, Mr. and Mrs. Librand, and sat down at my kitchen table, and we talked about it, and I was hoping to get like 6 or 8 acres to make me where I could have a natural tree line buffer around me. And Mr. Librand had drawn up a little deal. He was gonna offer me 1 acre to give me like 100 foot more, okay? Well, if that would've been all I could've got, I would've done it, but when I asked for, you know, more, the talk just fell apart. And he told me to get back with me, and he sent me an email stating that if I had more money than I had since, making a ridiculous offer, and he might entertain it. Obviously, he didn't want to talk to me. But my thing is, on the other side of the interstate, there's no development residential whatsoever. The land's for sale. As a matter of fact, these people that want to purchase this land and turn it into a truck stop wanted the land on the other side, from what I understand, They had some bad soil test and there was confusion and whatnot, I don't know. We've already got a truck stop, a commercial on the other side of 15, which there's plenty more land there that could be purchased and developed commercially. But with the fact that we got all these residents and long-time residents and family-owned properties on Duncan Chapel Road, I just think it would be more suitable for our county to develop that as residential going forward, nice neighborhoods.
Sir, I'm going to ask that you kind of move it on, if you would, please.
You know, okay, well, I appreciate your time.
See if you got any
Any questions?
questions from the commissioners? Discussion? Thank you, sir. I would entertain a motion.
Motion?
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
No. Did somebody make a motion?
You made the motion, right?
I wanted to make a motion to deny.
You want to make a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, we have it open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, and maybe this is a better question for staff. Commercial property, when developed, has a set buffer requirement. What would those be in this area? It depends on
varies.
the development.
Yeah, it's a use buffer. It's currently done by use. So depending on the use and the more the intense the use goes up, the bigger that buffer becomes against residential or agricultural.
Okay.
And it can be up to 100 feet.
Okay.
Yep.
I recognize the challenge of having commercial development immediately beside your house, but the proximity to the interchange, the fact that it's adjacent to existing commercial property, and then the unique lot shape with a lot of interstate frontage almost lends itself to commercial, from my opinion. So that's just my thoughts.
Well, I would agree with that as well, and this falls into the comprehensive plan where we want to get the nodes on the interstates zoned commercial. And commercial, as you notice, the industrial's down here in the southeast quadrant away from it. Actually, commercial is less impactful than the industrial zoning would be. But this does fit right in with our comprehensive plan and our zoning of the upper Dorchester County area. So I'm going to vote in favor of it. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious, I'm looking at this one home that abounds right up to this property that we're trying to rezone here. The man that just spoke, Mr. Lloyd, he's got 2 acres and a house, and that's my biggest concern. I think, other than that, I think the zoning should be commercial. I see a lot of wetlands on this property which cannot be filled, so, you know, so I'm just wondering if there's any way he could be buffered by the applicant, or they would agree to a buffer of, you know, that's a lot of land there. That's 65 acres. You could make a very nice 2 or 3, 4, 5 acre buffer there of trees and vegetation, and you could certainly mitigate some of this, because I do agree with the chair that the zoning probably should be commercial, but I'm concerned with that home there with 2 acres. So I'm kind of mixed on it, you know.
Any other questions, comments, discussion?
Well, you know, there's already 2 parcels there zoned commercial. I mean, how far more would we go with commercial if we approve this? I mean, it's a nice neighborhood, country living road, and yeah, the comprehensive plan might say commercial, but if you go out there and ride and look, it says something different.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, the motion is to deny the rezoning. All those in favor of it, raise your hand. We have 2 voting to deny. Now, who will be voting against the motion to deny? Raise your hands. So we have 5. Got it? Great. Okay. Okay, rezoning request number 828, property owner Low Country Baptist Church, Inc., That's 530 Beach Hill Road, zoning change from OI, office and institutional, to CLI-2, commercial light industrial. And I understand the planning commission, or the planning department recommends the CLI-2 be actually CN, is that correct? Mr. Davis?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Y'all are, the rezoning request is for CLI-2, but y'all are recommending CN, is that correct?
Correct. So the application received was for CLI2, which would allow a use that's been being used on the property more recently as a by right development.
Now, this is a church property, correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm gonna recuse myself and step down.
Okay. And the church is active?
No, I do not believe it's being used as a church now. We understand it's being used as an event area for special events, weddings, and such like that. The county has received several complaints on it. I believe there were some issues with police one night. Some people in Legend Oaks have expressed concern about this. This has been going on for a little while, and the use has been brought to the county's attention. A cease and desist was issued. That's what's prompted the rezoning application.
Okay.
So I think through that process, that zoning that was requested was the zoning that would allow this particular use to be established within the zoning district. Staff does not recommend approval of that, but within that process, staff looked at it. If you kind of look at the area, you can see it's kind of near Cook's Crossroads. You have kind of like a transition from that future development as it works down Beach Hill Lane. And you can see that area, those three parcels were OI. That was actually part of the R4. Those were R4, and those were then defaulted to OI. But staff could see how that kind of transition out of the GC into Cook's Crossroads could work its way into a neighborhood commercial then as it transitions into that section of the residential area of Legend Oaks.
Okay, in a nutshell, the difference between CN and CLI-2 allows them to do what?
Oh, that's a big difference. There's a huge jump in CN to CLI2. I mean, OI is kind of your lowest form of commercial. CN is only one above that.
Okay.
CLI2 would be several jumps above OI.
My point is it will not allow outdoor venues.
No, CN would not allow outdoor venues as a by right use. If they wanted to go and have an outdoor venue established, it would require a visit to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which would require them to request a special exception for that use within the neighborhood commercial. And then within that, the board would then be able to grant or not grant the special exception. And if they did grant the special exception, they could attach any and all restrictions to the use that they wanted.
Okay.
Like hours of limitation and,
All of it.
okay.
The current zoning, though, does not allow what they're doing, correct?
Oh, I know.
So they're in violation of their zoning currently.
Correct. That's why the county stepped in, and that's what's prompted this action for the rezoning.
Okay. Is there anybody here representing the rezoning? Name and address, please, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kelly Lowen. I live at 9180 Fieldstone Trace in Somerville.
Okay.
It's true, what this gentleman said, that we got in some trouble over there, and we profusely apologize to the community for that. But, the church was meeting over there until COVID came, and then I'm the pastor out there. And the, church had to move to a more populous side of town. And so now, the property's sitting there empty, and Kelly saw it. And she wanted to open up an event. Well, she got an accountant to do all the work for her. And he didn't lead her to Dorchester County office
she started having events. And I'm like, Kelly, talk to you.
So I started having events back in October. I did not know that I needed, I mean, the state gave me a license, but I didn't know I needed a county license as well. So we had, someone brought in a live band that was a live band. I mean, they had all kind of stuff going on. It was really loud. I did get some complaints. The cops did get up there. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when they started. So by the time I got there, I mean, I could hear it coming down the road. This is something that I will never allow again because I didn't know it was going to be that loud. So since then, that was a Saturday. That Thursday, I got the notice to shut down, and we did. I did have a birthday party reunion for my birthday out there, and this was the first week of this month. But other than that, the only way anyone can know that I'm in the building is because my lights are on.
Okay. Questions by the commission?
My question is simply, it seems like it's on the right church, wrong pew here. No offense, Pastor. It seems to me that this should be at the Board of Adjustments, more or less, with the existing zoning, because, I mean, CLI 2, I don't see that matching up with this, where this is. You got commercial general, you got office institutional. CLI 2, I don't see it. So that's my question.
One reason we thought we were all right, because there's a commercial place right there. There's one across the street from us, and there's one right next to us, I do believe. One is an aluminum recycling plant. We're in high CPM. And then there's another business, I believe, that's there. I couldn't say 100%, that it is there. And the thing about it is Kelly doesn't want to do these loud events. And what we've been trying to get across, but because of COVID, we couldn't get in to see anybody in the offices, is we don't really want it to change the zoning. We were kind of told to do that because we want to meet what's there. We don't want to be loud and obnoxious. We want to do what's already there. She does weddings. It doesn't have to be music. Churches do weddings. Churches do events outside. They do feedings outside. We do clothes giveaways outside. We do small flea markets outside. That's pretty much what she wants to do. She doesn't want to get into the trouble she got into.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody here for or against the rezoning? Would like to speak? Please come forward. We'll just work from front to back. And I would ask y'all, if you're going to say the same thing as the person in front of you, just say you agree. Now, before we do that, I'd ask Ms. Carlton, how many letters and complaints, emails did we get?
I received over, I think, 17 emails, which I had forwarded to y'all this afternoon to review. There are some videos that were sent and pictures. We do have some of those videos that we'd like to play, if that's possible with IT. To get those, Mike, is that okay with the chair?
Well, do you want to?
In one second. So we received all of those. Any phone calls?
No, most of them are via email.
We're not going to read them all because they all pretty much say the same thing because I read them this afternoon, yeah. And they're in opposition to it, so we understand that. You're on.
My name is Deacon Griffin. I live at 127 Blackwater Drive. Pretty much directly adjacent at the rear of this property. I agree with Mr. Pratt that CLI clearly is not appropriate zoning for this property. Until December, I think, this property was residentially zoned. We went through a county rezoning, I know that. It was determined that recently that OI was the appropriate zoning class for this. And I believe that that's probably what it still is. Actually, I would argue that it should have remained residential, but OI I can live with. CN I could live with. Just the use that I cannot live with. Zoning question, I think, is a red herring anyway. because, as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, even the CLI two would not allow what's the current use, the outdoor things. Am I correct?
Yeah, we break outdoor events into two different groupings. So there's an outdoor event venue, and then there's like an indoor event venue, which is more recreational use. And right now, outdoor would not be allowed in CN, CG, or CLI. But indoor would.
If you got any of the emails, printouts of the emails, you'll see that the applicant here is still, to this day, to this minute, advertising on her Facebook page, outdoor event venue, outdoor event venue. Come have your outdoor wedding here. I'm here to tell you that this one event in March was over the top, 10, 11 o'clock at night, wall rattling music. Not just for me, but for many of my neighbors. I understand that there was a specific permit given for an event following that, but there have been multiple events, and you can see all of those advertised on the same website. I really think zoning is not the issue here, it's more enforcement, and this applicant has no intent of following whatever zoning is given today. He'll be back out there with code enforcement, and I think this is going to be an ongoing problem. But changing the zoning even a little bit, changing it to CN, if that's what the property owner is requesting, I can maybe get behind that. But I think an incremental change to CN is even a step in the wrong direction here. I think the zoning request should be denied as
Thank you. Who else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Stephanie Emilio Harris, and I live at 125 Blackwater Drive in Leadville, Wisconsin. I'm a little nervous today. I'm just on the floor, and my heart's beating really fast. We were unaware that the property at 530 Beach Hill Road was no longer operating as a church. It was really quiet. My husband and I moved into Legend Oaks in 2019, and we moved there because it was a peaceful, appeared to be a peaceful community. We could rest quietly in our house, on our front porch, in our backyard. Our neighbors have been very pleasant. And then that all changed on March 6th. Actually, the party started around 11 o'clock in the morning, and I called the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office several times that day because the volume of the noise was so obtrusive. I couldn't hear myself think. I couldn't have a conversation with my family on my back patio, inside my house, on my front porch, because the noise was that loud. It felt like I was at front row seat with my head against the speaker at a rock concert back in my 20s, and I'm 49 right now. So as you can imagine, that was a very unpleasant feeling, as I could feel the sound reverberating in my body, and that is no joke. The Dorchester County Sheriff's Department did arrive at my house. Three deputy cars showed up. One got out of their car and stood in my driveway and confirmed that they could hear the noise coming from the party behind my house in the woods. I have sent several recordings to you, and I don't know how good it sounds from my cell phone, but it was so loud that I couldn't get my daughter to sleep that night. She's 6 years old, and normally we try to put her to bed around 7:30 or 8 o'clock, but the noise just continued to get louder from there. And not only that, but there were purple and white lights strobing through the air that we could see from our backyard. And I called Dorchester County Sheriff's Office, was not aware that this property was not zoned for events. And so they told me the only thing they could do was to shut it down after 10 o'clock because of the noise violation. So I called after 10 o'clock and asked them to please shut it down. And the music did not stop until 11:30 that night. And I have this fighter, everybody has this fight or flight innate feeling inside them, and mine is always flight. So what did I do? I emailed a real estate agent a couple days later and told her I wanted to put my house on the market because I couldn't imagine living there not knowing whether or not there was going to be another party happening where I wouldn't be able to relax in the comfort of my own home. There was nowhere I could go inside my house to get away from the noise. You can hear it all the way down the street on Carolinian. My husband and my daughter and I, we went putt-putting that day. We came home and our neighbors were standing outside their yard
looking at our house, and when they saw us drive by, they said, "Oh, we thought you were having a party." No, it's not us. And then Tico emailed Kira, the planning director, and Kira said that, we will talk with the property owner. This property is not zoned for events, and they do not have a business license. They will not be having any more events. May 1st, I sent you a recording of an event that occurred on May 1st. Granted, it was not as loud as March 6th, but nonetheless, there was an event held outside on May 1st that could be heard from my back patio. And I called the sheriff's office at 11 p.m. and the music did not stop until approximately 11:30. And this is without zoning, this is without a license. And if you don't have zoning or a business license to conduct business, how do you get insurance? What about the liability for the patrons of these events if they were to get injured on this property?
Can we pause you right there so we can hear I want to hear the March recording. That's yours off your cell phone, I believe, correct? Can we do that?
You're going to the volume? Okay. It will take a little load. No, it's here. It just got to load.
What is the problem?
The videos and just how they are just take a little bit to actually load in.
Okay. Did you have anything else while the video's loading?
I do. I am not unsympathetic to the business owner, the property owner. It's been a while, but over 23 years ago, I worked with a catering event planning company, a very prominent one in a different state. And they catered to NHL, NFL teams, corporate and private events. And I can tell you the meticulous detail that goes into planning events, from advertising to setting up the events and creating a business plan for your own business. Because I work directly with the owner of this catering event planning company that was and still is so popular. And so if you look at Eventable Facebook page, what took me by surprise was how beautiful it looked inside and how beautiful it looked outside. From the events that were advertised to how nicely, and you've got to imagine the time and the money that was spent beforehand, before the soft opening in October, to convert this church into an indoor event place. And this is all without zoning or licensing. So I can't imagine and I can't believe that somebody that would spend so much time and money and effort into creating this business that they want to launch and not look into the zoning or licensure requirements. I don't believe that one bit. And if you were to grant this rezoning, if you were to approve it, what does that tell the residents in our community? You know what that tells us? That rules don't matter. And if you don't follow the rules, then you can just change them to fit what you need, even though it doesn't benefit the community. Because I'll tell you what, it doesn't benefit our community. Because you know what, you want to honor the noise violations. I had to call the Dorchester County's office, Dorchester County Sheriff's Office, on March 6th. The Code Enforcement Division told her to stop. I had to call them again on May 1. Granted, a couple months apart, but still, rules were not followed. So what makes you think if you grant this zoning request that rules will be followed, because they're not being followed now?
Do we have the video up? Okay. Go ahead and play it.
So this is about as good as we can get the volume through the video.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
Mr. Chair, I'm convinced that the music was too loud, for what it's worth. I mean, I I don't think.
I'm worried about the depreciation of value in our neighborhoods as well.
Okay.
Because if we were ever to move in the future, who would want to move next door to a rock concert? You know, not knowing if you're going to be able, your daughter's going to be able to study that day or that evening or that weekend because there's a concert going on in your backyard.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who else would like to speak on this issue? Yes, sir.
My name is Jordan Landon. I live at 155 Carriage Ride Lane. It's just below this last corner here. I completely agree with these two on 100%. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. It wasn't until after 1 o'clock to finally get them settled down. And I completely would like to reiterate the fact that, current zoning hasn't been followed, and what makes, if we move it to commercial, seeing the lower CN, that's just gonna make things worse. I'm a small business lender. I work with the SBA loans and SBA tightens businesses every day. I feel for these people, but this is just the wrong area. We just bought our home. We moved from Columbus, Ohio, in January, and you come out and all that you know is beautiful, and then you have these concerts. It felt like a rock concert.
Okay.
So I'll keep it short, but
Thank you.
100% agree with you.
Thank you. Who else? Yes, sir.
We're not denying that didn't take place. It did. What we're saying is it will not happen again. The church has stepped in, and we talked to Kelly, and Kelly knows what she has to do. Like I said, we were kind of told we had to rezone. That's why. But we want to fit in this neighborhood. We are not going to do that again. It's not going to be allowed.
Okay. Thank you.
I can promise that. And I'll shut it down. So.
Thank you, Pastor. Okay, the chair would entertain a motion.
I make the motion to deny.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Who was the second? Bert was second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none?
We are denying the
Motion is
recommendation to a
deny the
CL,
rezoning.
to the CL2, correct?
CLI 2 is
Motion
what
is
was requested.
to deny the rezoning as requested.
Correct. Yes.
So we have that motion and a second on the floor. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous with one
Abstention.
recusal. Couldn't think of the word. Okay, the ayes have it. The rezoning is denied. All right, rezoning request 829, property owner Gary M. Lewis. This is changing from AC to CG. Location Ridgeville Road. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, so here we go. We got two out on this area of the county here. So here, we've been getting a lot of activity around this part. Of course, here we have the industrial park. Here we had some rooftops from Timothy Lakes. So right up here is the rezoning. We've got Highway 78 and Ridgeville Road. We've got this parcel and this parcel right here that are a part of this rezoning application. The applicant was requesting to remove the absence of control zoning and request general commercial to bring some commercial uses to this area that we anticipate of what we would consider to be a good intersection today and a larger intersection in the future. Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Anybody here representing this rezoning? Yes, sir. Take your time.
Several absence of control. We've been working on this for about 4 or 5 years in planning and trying to work something out for that corner to go. A couple of years back, they donated a large chunk of that land for a widening project of 78. And as this development this area is slowly being developed, and a large swath of that backs up to Timothy Creek is all wetlands. So the only developable land is a slim parcel that runs right across in front of Richmond Road. And the property fits right into the county's comprehensive plan.
Yep.
So it doesn't, it's not in contradiction to any of that. So he wants to get into both parcels, rezone at the same time, so we wouldn't have to be coming back at that point. There's very large buffers that are natural already in place with the wetlands.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Anybody here for or against the rezoning? I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. Rezone request number 830, and I believe this one's been withdrawn by the applicant, is that correct?
That has, and the applicant is here to officially put it on record to withdraw it if it,
We would ask the applicant to come forward again.
My name is Brian Kaiser, I'm the applicant for Stantec. We are going to pull it from this planning commission meeting and resubmit. We need to do some more due diligence.
Okay, thank you. We don't need a motion for that, do we? Done. Thank you, sir. Okay, moving right along. Rezone request number 831, property owner Thomas B. and Rachel B. Page. Columns Road request zoning change from CG General Commercial to R1 Single Family Residential. Mr. Davis.
so if you look on your screens there, you'll see this large general commercial piece, and then the piece that's being rezoned is this little section that was cut off by plat some time ago. When this was rezoned, I think this whole thing was rezoned back general commercial in 2004. Then just after that, this piece got cut off. The applicant has pretty much been trying to sell and market this to be able to sell it and just use it as a single-family residential home. Then they learned that they could not permit something like that in general commercial, and that's what's prompted this application. As you can see, it has direct frontage Columns Road. It's adjacent to existing R1. Staff supports it and recommends approval.
Is anybody here representing this rezoning? Yes, sir.
My name is Brian Page, I'm the owner of the property with my wife. We are just, asking and waiting for just the desire to have the option to build. It is general commercial now, do you want to go back to our life? And just the possibility of, having a prospective buyer, that whole large area there that you see that was family land that was rezoned to general commercial. I think, it was like a dairy farm at one time back in the past, for my wife's, grandmother. So that piece there that we are talking, we got, a very good deal from family always. But, anyway, we just, looking for that, to have that rezoned.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Anybody here want to speak for or against this rezoning? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Marquardt, lives on Pinewood Street. I'm actually the potential buyer of the lot that is intended to be rezoned. And we intend to just build a house there. It's a real quiet area. Collins Road is actually a private road. And there's even no possibility of commercial access being on that road. Our ones to build a nice house.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Do we have a
Second.
second? We have a motion and we have a second.
Yep.
Now, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it, it's approved. Yes, sir. Yes, you may. Okay, that's all the rezoning requests, subdivision applications and requests, final plats, conditional approval plat, Mallard Crossing Phase 5, 57 lots. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of Mallard Crossing phases through the time. This is the last one. So this was referred to when it came through as a preliminary plan as Pinewood Crossing, and it had some frontage along the road. Let me go back to here. So if you recall, we had Phase 1 here, and then here's the Mallard and Orangeburg interchange, and we've had a lot of development in general around this area. So what we have tonight is Phase 2 of Pinewood Crossing, but just through the marketing of the property, just so everybody understands it confused, they're just referring to this section as Mallard Crossing. So this area was Mallard Crossing Phase 4, and what we have here for final plat consideration is Mallard Crossing Phase 5. The applicant has done a very good job in securing all of their approvals from all departments prior to us bringing this to you tonight, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Any questions? Again, what's the conditions?
There are no conditions.
No conditions.
This applicant has done a great job.
The plat comments were taken care of.
Yeah, since the last time when the packets went out,
Right.
county has been able to work with the applicant to secure those final revisions, and they're all taken care of.
Great. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve?
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Street name request, Summers Corner, we have 32 new street names. Do we need to read them for the record, or can we just?
Yeah.
We have not. So we will just submit them for the record? Done. Do we have a motion to approve the street name requests as were submitted in your packages?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the street names?
I'd just like to take 1 second and read them, please. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
I'm going to abstain.
Street name changes are approved. Pardon me?
I'm going to abstain. Jackrabbit Drive. Now, that was really good. I like that.
And your abstention is for?
Lizardfish Lane. I mean, I'm telling you guys. I'll still abstain. That's good.
And give us a reason for your abstention, please.
Excuse me?
The reason for your abstention.
I just wanted to think about them a little more. Should have.
Okay.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Moonshell got him.
I thought you had a problem with lizardfish.
Okay, ZTA 21-01, text amendment to Dorchester County zoning and land development standards. Ms. Reinertsen.
All right, good evening. You should have all received 2 versions of the draft ordinance in here. There was a clean version, there was a red line version.
You want the clean or the red line? That's clean.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Clean's probably easier. In your packets in the staff report, I broke it out by article within the zoning code, and it's pretty much everything that we've covered over the past couple meetings. So Article 9, which is your existing absence of controls district, is being amended so that it's now this agricultural residential districts, ag uses, residential uses. There are a couple special exception uses, so these would still go to the boards of zoning appeals. These are for things like campgrounds or an RV park or certain accommodation or food service types businesses, and some recreational uses, golf or some outdoor recreational opportunities. Some of those 13's D, E, and F, historical event venues, that's more Middleton Place style, but if any, areas out there, some of those historical facilities wanted to take advantage of it, they'd be able to through the special exception process. And then the one that I wanted to more specifically ask you about is outdoor storage. So some of this will stay on here, but we've recently, again, amended the zoning code to allow outdoor storage. of two different categories. You have the commercial, which is where you can park your boat, you can park your RV, and then there's the industrial, which is where you're parking heavier equipment. And these are usually where you pay to rent the spot and you park your equipment there. So I'm going to ask a little bit more specifically if you think that we should allow those with the special exception uses, particularly the commercial one, to support people living in that area, or if it's just you don't foresee the need for it, or you don't think the industrial commercial level is appropriate and that should be backed out. Any thoughts on that?
I just have a question. In the storage areas for industrial, would that include like lay-down areas for heavy equipment that you might be selling?
Well, it's not intended to be part of a business. This is more intended as a standalone yard.
Okay.
Not associated with a business. You know, if you had your own business, you had your own yard on site for equipment that you're either selling, repairing, that falls under a different use category. That actually wouldn't be covered under here. You wouldn't be applying for it. Any thoughts on?
And the commercial portion would strictly be your standard storage units.
Right, and these are outdoor storage only.
understand.
So this is gonna be just an open, like typical open gravel lot where you can park your RV or you can park your boat.
For commercial. In industrial,
And then the industrial is
Heavy
you're getting
equipment.
heavier equipment and those types
so
of things.
obviously industrial doesn't belong in there,
Right.
but the commercial, I don't have a problem with it per se. What's the rest of the commission say?
Would there be some screening involved with
There is,
this?
remember, when we did the ordinance, we had that 30-foot buffer that we put into place.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, through this, where it is in the code right now is a special exception, so it still has to go through a special exception process with the Board of Zoning Appeals. They can place additional buffer requirements on it. But what I'm hearing is commercial might be okay, but pull out the industrial.
That would be my thoughts. I don't know about the rest of the commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you got to the rural Crossroads district yet?
Not yet, about
Okay.
to get there. Scrolling down to section 9.1.5, which is the density restrictions. Bert, to address your comments with that 300-foot, you know, having more than one dwelling unit on a lot, we clarified that, yes, it is allowed. You can have more than one dwelling unit on the lot. You could before, but we just clarified to make it clear. But then there was a provision in the ordinance that if you have multiple units on a lot, they all have to be within 300 feet of the roadway. But on some of these larger lots, you know, more often than not, we're seeing the residences pushed way far back on the lot. So we ended up taking that provision out, but did put in a provision that if you're going to site multiple homes on the lot, that each one should be cited so that if you carve out a lot for that home in the future, that it's going to meet your setback requirements. And then, again, the minimum lot width, we had a discussion last time about 150 feet might be too wide, so we've dropped it down to 100. Not included with this text amendment, we are going to be revising the land development regulations. I think we've talked about this before. That's going to be one of the next exercises. And in there, there's a provision for flag lots. And so we're going to, right now, I think the flag lot has a depth, you know, you can't be more than 200 feet long with the stem. So to address the rural areas, we're going to extend that width, the length allowance. So you'll be able to have a smaller lot where you're up on the street that would be less than 100 feet, and it'll be allowed to run back without having to get any kind of waiver for that 200-foot limitation.
Mr. Judy, the ones you submitted before, your concerns, would you address those?
Yes, sir. Still, I'm having a little bit of trouble with a hard number of 100 feet, be it 25 feet, be it 30 feet, whatever. But in the past, we had 2.5 times length, 2.5 times the width.
Yeah. Now it's, I think, is it 4 or 5? It's 4 times. Right now, it's no more than 4
Yeah,
times.
Okay, so if we got a 100-foot, 1 acre lot, it's 435.6 feet deep. So, I mean, that's what your regulation is now, 4 times the width?
No more than, right.
No more than 4?
No more than 4 times the width.
I think we can live with the 100 feet. I'm still having a little bit of trouble with it, but
Yeah.
it's better than,
I think some of it could be addressed. Some of the lots that I have seen come through, one particularly recently, you know, just had a long stem drive to get back to a larger portion in the rear, and we ended up having to tell them that they had to meet the minimum 150-foot lot requirement, and it resulted in some funky dimensions on the front. But I think the flag lot provision being revised will help in those particular scenarios, but not all.
A little bit of clarification about where that 100 feet is measured.
The lot width is measured at the building setback line. So the way that Section 5 of the zoning code is that it's not measured up at the right-of-way. You have to meet your minimum lot width requirement at the rear of your front yard setback. So if you have a setback of 40 feet, once you get 40 feet into the lot, that's where you have to meet the minimum width requirement.
So it can look like that.
You could. And that's what you get at the back of a cul-de-sac. Yeah.
Okay. Second question. We discussed and have discussed in the past, instead of requiring us to put, to get DHEC approval for a lot, that we put a statement on the lot that says this lot is not a buildable lot until such time as DHEC approves the septic or this lot gets sewer.
Yeah, and the only reason we didn't push forward with that at this time is I know when we've had discussions, we're looking at that as a land development regulation, which we're in the process of rewriting, and that's again going to be the next exercise. We felt that that was better geared towards that exercise than in with this particular one. And that's the only reason it didn't get included.
Okay. I still would like to see it in here. I mean,
So, Mr. Judy, or Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
the reason that concerns you is because you have to go through DHEC and go ahead and get a perk test, which is an expense, just to subdivide a lot that may not be developed at all.
Right.
Or require it.
right.
So you're forcing the property owner to spend money, take time, and do a step, and clog DHEC just because it's in here.
Yes.
So maybe we do need to address it in
And
here.
Yeah, it wouldn't be in section 9.1, it would be in a different section. The land development regulations, a different chapter.
And I might add that a DHEC permit is only good for 5 years.
I might add that the last time I tried to do one of those, it didn't happen in a couple of weeks either. It's a long process.
So, Mr. Judy, how would you change that?
I would ask that we'd be allowed to put a note on the plat stating that this is not a buildable lot until such time as DHEC approves a septic permit, and let the building permit actually be the trigger that calls for it.
That makes sense. Can we do that? Can we fix that?
We can, and I just for clarification purposes, that was in there previously in order to make sure that you didn't end up with a lot that wasn't buildable. So I just want to make sure that, that's understood, that, you might end up cutting out lots for a family subdivision where you cut out 5 lots. 3 of them maybe in the future could be buildable, 2 of them, maybe you couldn't get them to perk and it wouldn't be. So it was a protection in there for it. But I mean, if the commission wants it to, where we can just stamp the plat that it's not buildable until such time, or that
Exactly.
DHEC is, triggered by the building permit,
They don't
that
have to
can
do
be
it up
done.
front. Okay, next.
That gets through the absence of controls, section 9.1 revisions. So then we've created the new Crossroads district. And then this is again intended for those commercial nodes. So Grover, Rosenville, Dorchester, those are the types of communities. And the uses are centered around the types of uses that you either currently see there or could potentially see in the future. So these provide services and provision of goods to the adjacent community. It also will continue to allow residential, so we have put that in there to make sure that you can continue. We mimicked the same residentials in the surrounding area. Did you have a question?
I have a question.
Sure.
I don't want anybody to read anything into this, but when we look at groups there, you've got business, recreation, excluding drinking places and racetracks.
Yeah, and this.
Does that means no watering holes?
So, and I'll tell you where this came from. So as we were going through this exercise, I relied heavily on a lot of the comments and feedback that the commission and council got back in 2012 when you were going through. And so they had provisions for a rural crossroad district, and I pulled a lot of the language. The intent of the district is going to be the same, whether it was, the exercise back then or whether it's the exercise now. And that was something that was in there. So if the commission feels that, and it seemed to me that that came heavily from comments heard at the time, that they were open to expanding commercial uses, but maybe not for a drinking hole. But the commission can feel free to recommend any changes.
I would agree with the chair. We need a drinking hole out there.
Watering hole.
But, truthfully, back in 2012, I mean, people are scared of having a little, honky-tonk near their house, if you
Right.
will. But today, I mean, there are breweries, there's craft beer, there's all, it's a different vernacular, I think. So maybe we could
A
use that
winery
word.
with a
Support
tasting
leaving
room.
that in. I would support that.
Yeah, a winery with a tasting room. I mean, things like that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's an easy fix to make.
What else on the Crossroads?
That was, there wasn't anything else in particular that I wanted to point out. If there was anything you saw that you had questions about, mostly it's just a district that continues to allow residential uses, but also will allow for these commercial uses at the intersections. Then moving into section 10.4, which is accessory structures, what we did here is just created a separate section dedicated to rural districts. Pulled some of the language pertaining to accessory structures from the suburban districts, but then tweaked it to address the, what we see in the rural areas. The size limitations are the same, but we did put in the exemption for agricultural structures. And then we added some language about allowing structures within the front yard for certain instances. It was really hard to try to come up with a specific set of standards as to when it would be allowed, so we just left it up to zoning administrator's determination, which I don't usually like to do. But we can always tweak that section later if we find that we need to. And which is a good point for me to interject at this time, that even though we're coming forward with this text amendment right now, it is a living document. I anticipate that I can't think of everything, so there will be changes. Just anticipate that, in the next year or two, that there probably will be some changes, additional changes coming forward.
That's right. It's a good step forward we're taking right now.
Right. Cottage Industries, this is pretty much the same that you had seen last month. I do want to note that we did change a little bit on the cottage industry scale. So I think before it was a 2-acre threshold as far as the allowances for the square footage of the accessory buildings. We've upped that to 5 acres if you want to go over 2,500 square feet of accessory buildings as a large accessory building. And we limited it to certain use groups. So if you're doing personal services, which, you've got a beauty parlor in your home, you're doing somebody's taxes, those types of uses, you can do it on less than 5 acres, and you can have up to 2,500 square feet of accessory building. If you're doing something more intense than that, you're going to have 5 acres. Your setbacks for those uses are going to be greater. Yeah.
I need to back up to this last section.
Sure.
Go ahead, so you go ahead and finish if you want to, and we can go back.
No, that was pretty much it, requiring 5 acres for more intense uses, and then having setbacks 100 feet from the property lines. But then if you've got a house on the lot next door to you, you've got to be 250 feet away from that house, which also helps with the noise requirements further in the section.
Go ahead, Mr. Judy.
The accessory structures, I'm looking in there and I don't see that it says
The agricultural
Yeah.
one. So if you're at item D and go all the way down to the second to last sentence.
Okay. How about the setbacks?
Setbacks are F, 5 foot from the rear side property lines, and then if they go over 800 square feet, then it gets bumped to 15,
And that's for ag too?
and that's for ag too.
Okay. And then I need to go all the way back to the first page. I see mineral resource extraction is taken out of conditional uses.
No, the only you mean the actual word itself. So 1D, use group 1D is mineral resource extractions, but 1C, which is ag-related businesses, was included. So it's lumped under the general agricultural group. So it's still in there as a conditional use, but because 1C was also added, and 1C is not mineral resource extractions, that language was just taken out.
So 1D is mineral
Mhm.
resource, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That all your concerns?
I'm good.
Good. All right, any further discussion on it? I would entertain a motion, and the motion should include the change on the plat comment with Mr. Judy and the watering holes,
And the outdoor storage.
outdoor storage. Okay. Now, I'd entertain a motion.
I would make that motion as stated by the chair for these text amendments.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, now we have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Great work, Ms. Robertson, on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is East Edisto, Summers Corner Community Plan 3, Ms. Robertson. Or is that
Yeah, I'll
Mr.
take
Davis?
that one. So here we are, back to East Edisto. So we've seen a few of these community plans. This is the only thing that the Planning Commission sees really as a part of development. All preliminary plans and all final plats are done at a staff level. So what you see through here is Summers Corner Community Plan 3. This particular sheet of that community plan kind of represents what you can kind of see as the road thoroughfare grid system and the future lot program. This is all part of the East Edisto Development Agreement. This is the process of how we kind of start at the top with one of these community plans, which dictates the types of roads, the types of transects that certain homes can be built on, which then have an effect on the future building permits for frontage build-out. And I just want to say that we are anticipating at the county seeing a lot of these over the next year. So we have had others submitted to us that are currently under review that will probably be coming back to you outside of this, not 3, but just know that East Edisto and this development is ramping up at a speed that is very intense. But here we've got Summers Community Plan 3. Staff recommends approval of it, just with the condition of the successful recording of the boundary plat that matches the area that they're running all of their calculations from.
And that's the only condition, the plat recording of the boundary survey, okay? Any questions? I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. Let's move on to modification of land development standards, excessive lot depth in relation to lot width. Once again there, Ms. Robertson.
I'll take this one as well.
Oh, okay.
So here we've got, what we've got next to it, we've got 2 modifications, but they're separate.
I need to recuse myself, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
So here, the plat ahead of you is, and it kind of talks to a little bit of what Kira was just saying, is that the portion of one of the modification regarding this lot down here, where you can kind of see what would be referred to as a flag lot, that's actually where currently it can only have so much of a maximum length. This exceeds that maximum length. So just like the previous modifications, which is a part of the land development code, staff cannot approve these items at a staff level. So people request these modifications, and the Planning Commission has the authority to grant the modification of that land development standard.
why is there not in the back of my mind, I thought we discussed this a year or so ago and gave staff permission to approve these?
No, we don't.
We didn't?
No.
Okay,
We talked about taking final plats in general from a planning commission to a staff level approval.
Okay.
But all of that will require a change to the language in the code, which Kira was addressing, is that, we're doing these things for the county, we're just doing them in priority. Land development regulations is one of those, and we anticipate those kind of being worked on. One that's a request for a modification for the total length. That
This is
length there is
Powder Horn Road.
approximately 327 feet, so it exceeds the maximum
This
length.
is Powder Horn Road.
I'm sorry?
Powder Horn Road. This one,
Yeah, on the long there, hold on.
because it's track 7, I believe, that's
Yes.
exceeds the length of 200 feet.
Yeah.
And we need to approve that.
Well, there's two as a part of this plat. So as a part of this plat, when it was being reviewed by staff realized there was two things that this plat did not meet that required the request for the modification. One of them is the length of the flag of the cul-de-sac, and the other, as you can see, based off of what Mr. Judy was just kind of referring to, is the length to depth ratio. As you can see, they exceed kind of that ratio of length to depth in the general component here. So that's what's being requested as a part of this modification.
That's the strangest looking lot I think I've ever seen.
Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Okay, do we have a second? We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. That one's approved. Now we have section 17.1.2A1, minor subdivisions.
Yeah, so here, this one is one that you've seen recently regarding a modification where these three lots that you see in front of you here were a part of a process of a subdivision where they burned their one minor subdivision. I think we've had maybe 4 or 5 of these in the last 2 years, it seems. So essentially, prior to them submitting a plat, they wanted to see if there was going to be the appetite of the commission to allow them to submit a plat creating these 3 lots that all have direct access along West Butternut Road, that would be approved at a staff level if you all were to grant the relief of a modification for them to do another plat exercising the minor subdivision requirement.
Okay. Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. I have no report today. Planning Director, do you have anything? Okay. Public comment. Anybody in the public would like to come up and comment? Hearing none, there's one other motion in order. I'll make it, motion to adjourn.
I was going to say that's yours.
Have a second. I thank everybody. It's a long meeting. I thank you for keeping on point and moving it along.